Welcome, I am Dino. I'll just check this works. Yes, excellent, good. This is me, I like shirts. I work for Skylabs. If you walk down the main thing, you probably saw a really nice building on your right-hand side. That's where I work. That wasn't there when I started here, so I've helped kind of found that and build it. I help Sky solve problems, so we call those opportunities. Obviously, in business land these days, nobody says they're problems. Like Houston, we have an opportunity. That doesn't work, but you know what I mean. I'm a techie, so I used to be a tech director, I used to be a coder, I've been a games developer, I've been in electronics, hardware, moderate success. I wouldn't say I'm hardcore anymore. I'm also a creative, obviously. I've been a creative director, trained as a creative, I'm an artist, I'm a musician, all that boring stuff. And also, there'll be a QR code at the end. I do the Dino saw every week on YouTube. It gets about like 200 views externally. So if you want to, I could easily double it in this room. But there'll be a QR code at the end and scan that. I'm not going to talk about Sky. Although I am from Sky, I'm not going to talk about Sky. All I'm going to talk about, I'll do this one slide. We have a lot of stuff going on, load of channels, loads of platforms, loads of cool stuff going on, lots of logos. Took me ages to squash them into that little thing on the side. But you lift up any rock, any plant, look at any door, what's going on behind it, you'll find all of these things going on. Tech is through everything we do. So whether it be on the creative side, studios, it's tech, right? And depending if you speak to a lawyer in Sky, they'll either go, well, we're an entertainment company. And then you speak to another one and go, we're a technology company. And we're both, obviously. But depending on which lawyer I'm talking to, I'll change the way I approach things and what shirt to wear. So I thought because it's sort of careers based, I'll do a very quick, how on earth did I get here? Because I look like I've always done this, and I haven't, clearly. So this is me, about 5, pot-bellied. I come from a farming background. There is no reason I should be here right now. My father's side were builders merchants. My mum's side were farmers. That's all handmade. My mum stitched that. We had no money. I don't come from a moneyed background. There were no degrees in my family. We're not educated folk. And I was really bad at school as well. I was the last year to do O-levels. I got like, the highest I got was a C. The rest of them pretty much are a good Scrabble hand. You could get a lot of vowels in there, put it that way. Basically, I flunked basically my A-levels. I got to A-levels, by the way. I got to them, so I did do them, but I just took 8 A-levels because nobody said you couldn't take 8. That's the way I did it, and I failed nearly all of them. I got an N and a U in there as well. And I looked at what N and U means. It's like not gradable and ungradable. They're sort of different layers of no. But I thought I should carry on trying to be smart. So I tried to get a job at Marconi, which is like the fountain of all youth, the start of telecommunications, Marconi. It's a little bit like The Apprentice. You don't work with Alan Sugar on The Apprentice when you win. You work with some other bit of Amstrad that failed and is trying to keep going. So I would have worked for Fisher Electronics. Nothing wrong with them. They just make switchgear for oil refineries in the Middle East. Remote switchgear as well. You don't even see it working. It just does that. So I thought, no, it's not for me. So I did a pivot. You should always consider a pivot. So I went to, did an art and design foundation, the glorious Warwickshire and Hinckley Foundation. I got to Falmouth School of Art and Design. Big shout out to Falmouth. My daughter has just graduated through those doors this week in illustration. Well done. And then this is my journey. It's the pinkest pink you can ever do. I found out the perfect pink for this screen. But basically, this is my journey from that point. I'll bounce through them really quickly. Bear in mind, I was an artist at this point and I liked computers. That's as far as I got. So I just landed on my feet with this company. We did like the Millennium Dome, the people bit in the middle, World Expos. We did all of that. I learned to do video editing and computers and plug things into laser discs. I then did CD-ROMs, so Pingu, Teletubbies, Noddy, and yes, I have won a BAFTA. I can show you a picture of my BAFTA, me stood next to it. I have it at home. I've won a BAFTA, yay. But CD-ROMs. Then I worked for Fox Kids, not the evil Fox, the actually nice Fox. And then that became Jetix, but I did actionman.com. I made games. I made casual games for the internet when Flash was a thing. Yay to Flash. And then they got bought by Disney. So I then ended up working for Disney, became Disney XD, and I started making things that turned up on TV. So quite frankly, we had a load of old PDFs. I said, what should we do today? It's like for mums and dads to figure out which one of the PDFs they're going to print out today. And I thought, that's a great TV program idea. What should we do today, kids? It turned out on TV. So I started making TV stuff. You don't work for Disney if you work for Disney. So if you've ever watched a film, those logos at the beginning are from the people who made the film. So, you know, it goes like Disney or Marvel. You go, it's not really Marvel who make it. It's all like Lionsgate and all that sort of stuff. Lionsgate, I think they make ice cream. Anyway, worked for all of these people, Club Penguin. I wrote a physics engine, the thing right at the end. I wrote a physics engine from scratch just to prove somebody wrong, a freelancer who let us down. Literally started with nothing. I wrote a physics engine. What an idiot with a C in maths, by the way. I then started doing those cartoon things that I thought I really wanted to do when I was a kid. I never did. I got some of them published. Did the startup thing. Startups were cool. I did a startup and it was horrific. It went horribly wrong, but I learned so much from it. I could get free entrance into the Ministry of Sound. That was the best thing that happened in that startup. But we did their app and whatever. Moshi Monsters, you know, Moshi Monsters. Yeah, good. Sorry. So I worked for Moshi Monsters. There was a movie. Promoted the movie, that's what I did. But I was making games there. I was helping them do this driving game, which was going to be this kind of new game that were going to come out, but they folded just after I left, actually. Then I went to advertising, never been in advertising. I thought that was interesting. I was a tech and innovation director in advertising. So how do you make interesting things that people see? So that's what we did. So all this kind of, you know, I was born in Carlisle, I was made in the Royal Navy. We did all that sort of stuff. Importantly, the one in the bottom right is Sky. That was one of our biggest clients. And they said, could you come over to Sky? Could you leave and work for us? And this wasn't here. So this is an architect's drawing of what was going to be on the space where there was some sort of slightly damp buildings there. And they said, like, 30,000 people work at Sky. How do we innovate at scale? And how do we do everything from anti-piracy to diversity and inclusion to what's the future of sport to what's the future of news, whatever it might need to be? What's the thing? How do we do it? So it turned out we came out with this really sort of ragtag, you know, yeah, you can do the double diamond, you can do design sprints, but if you really dig into it and get really powerful with people, that's what we did. We do it online. So all the way through COVID, we were doing 4-week workshops, like literally 4 weeks, 5 days a week, workshops online. And they were awesome. And they weren't like you go, oh, they're not as good as in real life. If you're doing well, they're great. You just don't have the great snacks. So these sorts of people, this is the anti-piracy team, and they were doing some awesome stuff. So this is one of the kind of the drawings we did at the end. And just even stuff like this, we actually, I don't know where it is, we actually got the person that we kind of put in prison for piracy a couple of years before. They came out of prison that week, and we got them as an expert witness to say, like, how would you not get caught again? And it's that sort of thinking to then go, how would you solve the problem differently next time? So, and there's a lot of other things. There was the commander in the Royal Navy. The reason you don't hear about Somalian piracy is they've got 10 rules of piracy that quashed piracy, and then they're exactly the same as media piracy as well. So that was a brilliant interview. So that's how I got here. I have no right to be here, but I'm really excited about fixing stuff, and that's kind of all I've just done throughout my career. If I had a red thread, it would be a teacher. That's the one thing I saw somebody once said, your red thread. It's the one thing that connects everything you do. As soon as you find it, it guides you for the rest of your life. I'm a teacher, apparently, and I kind of agree with it. This is what you came here for. The tech trends you really need to know about, We're Too Afraid to Ask, actually comes from a sex book in 1969, I think that title. You know, everything you wanted to know about, but we're too afraid to ask. There's a book about sex. However, didn't need to know about that. So you're going to see a lot of slides. This is the speed I go, unfortunately. Don't take notes. It's not going to work for you. I'm going to tell you about a load of stuff that comes from the industry, not from Sky. So I'm not going to use this as, this is not a Sky sell. This is literally the opposite. This is everybody else's stuff that we use as inspiration. The reason I'm doing this is so I don't have to get all the slides from Sky. I can get them from wherever I want to. But rest assured that the reason every single slide is in here is because we're either doing it, inspired by it, or we're already ahead of the game on it. But I'm not telling you that, so you don't know why I put it in there, but that's exactly why they're in there. So we are about to cover a warning about trends, if there is one, artificial intelligence, content creation, real world experiences, data, hardware, energy, legislation, doing the right thing, and finally. And that's what an and finally is. At the end of the news, they go, and finally, you know, a duck has had 15 ducklings. You know, it's called an and finally. So just if you want to know, it's actually got a term. I'll do an and finally as well. The biggest trend you need to be aware of right now, 2023 to 2028, I think it's a big trend. Beware of trends. Trends are trends because they are trends. They are trending. You can't predict a trend because the trend is the thing that's happening. That's why it's trending. Okay, so people who predict the trends, that's all they're doing. They're predicting it. They're not saying it is one. So the Gartner tech hype cycle is a brilliant thing. Comes out every autumn or August, I think it is. And it's about hype. And well, basically what it has, something happens. So I'll keep, wait, shall I carry on doing this side? You're all looking at me like, innovation triggers happen, something happens, something gets invented, okay? You all hear about it through people like me or through the public or the news or whatever it is. It's got a peak of basically inflated expectations, they call it. It can do anything. AI is currently there. NFTs were there last year. Blockchain, you can name all of these things, VR, AR, whatever, metaverse. So, and then you go, oh, it isn't quite as good as I thought it was. And it's the blockchain's really difficult and it's been ruining the world. Trough of disillusionment. And then you go, actually, it is quite useful for things like supply chains and things like that. And then you go, well, the plateau of productivity. And then stuff happens and you never see it again because it's useful. Okay, so that's what that is. Now you can argue this is 6 months old and there's a bunch of stuff here that should rightfully be over here, right? So you've got things like machine learning code generation. Don't know about you, already using that. Web3 foundation models, like who's those crazy weird foundation models that nobody's using, right? Like we're all kind of using them, right? So this is like wildly out of date already. It's only 6 months long. So just be aware of trends because some of them are so out of date. The things that you're using right now, maybe even some of the platforms you're using right now that are emerging might not be the leaders in 3 months' time. Just be aware of that. One of those areas where that's happening is artificial intelligence. I'm not going to talk about ChatGPT. If you haven't had a go at ChatGPT, signed up to OpenAI, then shame on you, shame. You should do, but be careful what you put in there. Just have a go so you can see how it works. If you've not had your mind blown by generative AI and large language models and chat, you should do. The only point of this one, this is Claude 2. Claude 1 was out before, obviously, because that's how numbers work. But this came out, what, 2 weeks ago? And it's great. You know, the Meta one came out 2 days ago and it's even better, right? And this one you can upload PDFs into. So I put my Dino saw that I do every Monday morning. I did a PDF and I just said, here's the last 5 Dino saws. Which ones of these should I put out as TikToks? It gave me some really good advice because I can now upload stuff and I can do that in the public version, not the enterprise version. So that's kind of cool. Point is, there's more than out there than you think. Don't just hang around ChatGPT. Go and have a look. Secondly, plugins for those things, mainly ChatGPT, so I am going to talk about it. But plugins, you might have heard that thing that, well, ChatGPT was only trained like or GPT-3 was only trained until 2022, and then 2020 or 21. GPT-4 was 2022, and then if you ask it who's the current prime minister, it won't know because it wasn't trained. That's where plugins come in. They bridge the gap. So you can then use a plugin to look at the internet. You can use it to look up train times. You can use a plugin to look at your local data. So all of a sudden, the large language models, the foundation models that sit underneath these become useful, and then you can do the darting about on top using plugins. So plugins are super awesome. If you don't know about those, definitely have a look at those. This is Style Drop. So Style Drop is a thing called style transfer. Style transfer has been around for a while in sort of ways, but usually what you do is you have a thing and you want to transfer into a thing. So you'd have a picture of a dog and a Rembrandt. You go make a picture of a dog in the style of Rembrandt. So you'd have 2 things and you transfer the style. So this is now using that sort of chat prompt as well, where you just feed it in with a piece of reference. I like this image. And then you can say whatever you want and it will make whatever you want in that style. So it's not just using make this in this image. It's just going, here's the reference. I'd like an antelope, and it will give you an antelope. Give me a chair, it'll give you a chair. So that's really, really powerful. Really interesting if you're a designer right now, especially if you're my daughter who's just graduated in illustration from Falmouth this week, for instance. It's kind of interesting where that's going. And also what you've got is, I'm noticing quite a lot of it's industry against, it's not against, it's deploying AI for the consumer, should we say. But now I'm starting to see it the opposite way as well. So you're starting to see weaponizing AI against businesses as well. So this is a really good example of a scammer's time waster. So if a scammer phones you up, you just put them straight onto this. It's using text or speech to text, text to a large language model. It's understanding what they're saying. It's then converting it into a plausible answer, turning it back into speech and talking to the scammer on the phone. On average, it can keep them busy for 5 minutes every time you get a scammer on the phone. So that's a perfectly good use of AI as far as I'm concerned. It's nowhere near my 25.5-minute average that I'm getting, but it's a good thing. So I quite like that. You know, there are like AI lawyers that can get you off your parking tickets, that sort of thing. So when we start to see this starts to cancel subscriptions or cancel your magazine, that sort of thing, it's quite interesting. And then we go to some really, really weird stuff. So this is an experiment with a corpus of data of people in MRI scanners or fMRI scanners. Put people in a brain scanner essentially and show them images. If you show enough people a picture of a red heart on a blue background, you can start to see the similarities in all of their brains when they see a red heart and a blue background. You get enough people, you can get some really good data out of that. And if you get enough people looking at enough images that are all the same, you can start to get patterns in all of them. Then if you just get a completely normal person in an fMRI scan and just go imagine something, close your eyes, you imagine that through your optical cortex. It can read that and go, I think you're imagining a pig, you know, whatever it is. And it can pull that out and generate it using diffusion, which is what's going on over there. So this is what the person was actually thinking about, and this is what an AI pulled out of their brain. So, practically speaking, you go, did you see the campaign on the A40 when you drove past? You go, well, I don't know. Well, get in the fMRI scanner. Is it in your brain? Yes, it is. But likewise, law enforcement, did you pick the safe in the thing? Go, no, it wasn't me. You go, the picture's in your brain if you're doing it. You did do it. So quite interesting. Content creation. By the way, it's as quick as this all the way through. Content creation, Adobe Firefly. So this is weaponizing really AI into creative suites at an industrial scale. So this is using all that good stuff you've just seen, but it's actually in Adobe Firefly. You can get this and you can use it. If you don't like the shadow underneath something, you just put a big lasso around it and go, please get rid of the shadow. It gets rid of the shadow. So it's really interesting how commercial bits of software are now using this, and it's becoming real, which is amazing. This is actually called MetaHuman Animator. It's using a mobile phone, 2 little sensors at the side. So this is somebody doing a bit of motion capture. No dots, no nothing, no virtual studio, just some motion capture. Within about 5 minutes, it takes all that motion capture and it skins it into a real-time animation of a person, a MetaHuman. If you don't like this, there are sliders. It can be more male, more female, bigger nose, different hair. It can be whatever you want to do. Funny eyes. It can be a character. It can do whatever else. That was about 6 minutes. That was live on stage when they did that demo, capturing somebody and turning them into something. Absolutely amazing. That would have taken a week of work before and a lot of kit. This is real-time rendering. So this is Unreal Engine, Unreal 5, I think 0.3 is out at the moment. Every point they release just blows my mind. Real-time rendering, but this can run on really small devices as well. I mean, processor-wise. So, for instance, mobile phones, you can do this. Billboards, you can do this. It can render this real-time. That little camera you see on top of Sky Glass, the live camera, it can render it on there as well. So, if you're giving video to people, those like interior shots of a house, well, that can be dynamically generated now. So, looking for live rendered video. Then when we go to things like voices, you've heard of celebrities like, well, we're going to mimic your voice and, or we're going to just license the voice to something. There are 2 ends of this spectrum. You've got somebody like Robin Williams. When he passed away, he wrote into his will, you will never use my likeness in computer generation. And then you've got Grimes on the other hand. Hands up, who knows who Grimes is? Good musician, basically quite funky musician. She's gone like this is cool. Like, I'm going to see where this goes. Use my voice. In fact, I've made a Grimesifier. So you upload your lyric, you put it onto there, creates it in their voice, and basically downloads it. You can then make some music with it. You can even download all of the stems of her music. If it does well, great. 50-50. Let's share in the profit. If it doesn't do well, make another one. Try harder. So she's like, let's see where this goes. I really love that, where that's going. There's a Microsoft technology that takes 3 seconds of somebody's voice to mimic their voice. So that's kind of interesting for, with Santander, my voice is my password. You go, no, it isn't. Remix. So this is, again, this is Google, but this is their Performance Max platform, which is their programmatic platform. If you work in program and media or programmatic media, you upload kind of versions of the ad and maybe some sort of dynamic copy that will appear on top of it. This is taking it a whole new step. You just go, look, I've got this picture of this product, and that's your starting point. I'd like a cat next to it on a thing, and it would generate that for you. Or I've got this video, and I'd like the video to have a voiceover on it, but I'd like a male voiceover that's a bit deeper than not. It'll generate all that for you. So it makes sure that the video it creates for the advert at the end of it is exactly the right video for the person who's receiving it. And you could call it targeting, but also all of these are now being deployed in dynamic ad generation right now. So it's not only saving some time, but it's also making sure that the product is the right thing at the end of it as well. Real world experiences, I do quite a lot in what's called out of home, which is a weird thing, but billboards and stuff. And I'm starting to notice quite a lot of billboards really starting to be the genesis of stories. So this is the Madison Square Gardens, not monosodium glutamate, but this came out. They actually did the first firing up of this about 2 weeks ago in Vegas. This is a 580,000 square feet of LED panels. There's a bunch on the inside as well. It's a venue. It's like a music venue. And so you can generate these visuals, or you can just run, things like, pre-rendered things as well. Those are cars going there. It's a massive, massive thing. The reason you might have seen this is because it's gone onto the internet. Whereas before it used to be the billboard is the billboard you see. And did you see the billboard? Now it's like, let's make the billboard as spectacular as it possibly be. So it gets put on social media and our reach increases as well. So these external experiences are becoming more and more extravagant and more interesting as well. This was from about 1.5 years ago when we were right in the middle of NFT mania. And this was about sort of a vision of NFT art and where would you display your NFT art. So you'd buy your piece of NFT art, you'd walk down the street with your glasses on, you go, I'd like it to be just there. And you put your NFT art there, that's great. And if anybody subscribed to your vision of that street, they could then log into your vision of the street and they walk down and they see your piece of artwork. Likewise, you know, a public broadcast might be on here as well, or there might be an artist who's maybe done something. So there might be people walking down the street avoiding things that aren't really there, but you know, because they're seeing things and everybody's got a different version of reality in their vision. Again, you know, let's bypass the glasses, let's go into the optical cortex and we can plug straight in. We don't need glasses anymore. So, but that's a really interesting vision of the future where we can actually place experiences in reality. This is called anamorphic screens. So these are like one of those kind of optical illusions where if you render it in kind of 3D, it looks like it's 3D. If you move to the side, it looks wonky because it doesn't quite work anymore. But if you do see these in the right angle, they look amazing. They look exactly like this. So you put a red dot on the screen, then you go like, take a picture from here. And this is what you're seeing on TikTok, and this is what you're seeing on Instagram, is because they look amazing, and that's the game they're playing. So those external experiences are looking like this because they're supposed to be super funky. QR codes. I've been a big fan of QR codes. Yay for the resurgence of the QR codes. I've been to conferences about the technology behind QR codes, and I used to sketch them in my book to try and scan one that might work one day. It's never happened. I'm such a nerd about this. However, you look at this one in China. This one here is Rick Astley. Actually, that should be looping, but that one in Rick Astley, every single frame of that Rick Astley QR code will take you to a Rickroll video of Rick Astley. This has actually been generated, so it looks like a nice little sort of scene of a market, but it actually scans as your QR code. So you can just imagine in the future a magazine article that looks like a perfect picture that just scans as a QR code as well. But likewise, it's a bit dodgy. You don't know where QR codes are going. So but there lies the frisson of the QR code. I really quite like them. Come and have a chat later if you want to know how they work. I'm such a nerd about them. Entertainment, obviously that's what we do. You may have missed the esports Olympic week, as it was called, about a month and a half ago. This is the Taekwondo finals. Now, the great thing about the Taekwondo finals, it was, well, if you're a Taekwondo fan, this needs to die with fire and never see the light of day again. But basically, if you're like a sports fan, then this is, it allows different weights in different countries, different genders, different skill levels to play against each other, fight against each other, which was brilliant. There were 3 other sort of formats that they had. There was like cerebral games like chess. They weren't particularly physical. There were games that they were sort of trying to mimic reality. So you got things like the shooting was actually Fortnite, or they'd have like an F1 game for driving. And then this one was the physical game. So it's kind of interesting how those are basically becoming the experiences. Vision Pro, you must have seen this, what, a month ago now, this came out. 2 things I would really pull out about this is not that VR headsets are kind of cool. There's some weird things about this one, but basically pass-through and spatial computing were the 2 things that really lit up for me. Pass-through has now become table stakes. So pass-through is when you have a VR headset, you can't see a thing, but there's cameras on it that then project the real world onto your glasses. So it looks like there's nothing there. And therefore they almost become like augmented reality glasses. So that pass-through is really important. It's a good example here. Spatial computing is the opposite of the metaverse. So the metaverse is like, we'll create this thing that nobody's convinced about, but please come because that's the entire thing that this is for. Whereas spatial computing really says, let's use this piece of kit to do what you currently do, but better. If it's not doing that, it's not the right piece of kit for that. It's a real sensible shift into what these are for. So basically we've seen spatial computing before in production lines and things like that. But I just like the shift with Apple just to make it really practical. So look out for that. How do we know that people are actually still using them or actually using them? So this is from Aviva. This is their stats. So 31% spike in home contents claims based on VR headsets, and of average £650, and it's mostly for broken TVs. So we can use that data point to know that people are actually using VR headsets in their homes and smashing their faces into walls. So we know that they're using them. So I just want to put that one in there. It's really useful. Now, this could have been in the AI section. This is completely generated by AI. You may have seen this, but everything is generated from AI. The scripts, everything. You'll notice AI, currently the way it is, not particularly good at interfacing mouths with things, not particularly great at fingers, and laughing becomes magically hysterical, and fire just becomes fire, you know, tubes of fire with weird hands. So, but that said, you know, this wasn't even possible 3 months ago, and it is possible now and will be absolutely better in 2 weeks' time. So there's a couple of things going on here. Just imagine Stable Diffusion is creating the images, Runway is actually doing the video, but ControlNet allows you to sort of control what is similar between each one. That allows you to do the actual storytelling narrative, which is really useful. And then this one, which I just love this, it's telerobots, low latency is telerobots. So 10 millisecond, like your reaction time is about 250, 300 milliseconds. This can actually get the, from when the guy at the back is doing a punch, it can actually react in 10 milliseconds. It's doing that because it's predicting what he's going to do, not necessarily looking at what he's going to do. So that's really interesting. Mix that with the Taekwondo thing, and then you've got something I'll probably watch. This was actually inspired by Real Steel, which is the last movie I ever worked on at Disney, which is about fighting robots. I kind of like that, but that's kind of neat. Right, so data. Who doesn't like data? It's one of my favorite things, obviously, as a creative. Synthetic data, you might have heard that bandied around, digital twins. This is a really good example. This is NVIDIA's digital twin. So this is actually just a 3D render. Well, it's real time. So this isn't real. This is actually their synthetic world, and you can go and drive around it. So if you're doing self-driving cars or delivery, or if you're doing town planning, you want to know where the traffic lights should go so that on a foggy day you can see them. Or if you're trying to put adverts and the tree might grow in the summer and then it'll die back in the winter, can you see it? And this is really useful. Likewise, you know, does your camera system find like grazing deer next to motorways? So those digital twins, which are so accurate that they can actually create useful data to train your other systems on, are really, really important and becoming a really useful source of data. First, third, and novel data, or in other way around. Third party is obviously somebody else's data. That's becoming less and less available. GDPR is starting to bite in a nice way, in a good way. And also some of the dodgy data sets you used to get to are quite rightly shutting down and dissolving. First party data is the data that you generate, that you hold. It's somebody else's third party, really. But there's this other thing called novel data that nobody's really looking at. So this is a really novel data set. People who drink gin are more likely to impulse purchase on the internet, okay, as opposed to beer drinkers and or whiskey drinkers. They do that mostly in the evenings, mostly, not all the time, but mostly in the internet. And then what do? Is they buy clothing, includes shoes, it notes with a little star, but also the third, second, and whatever that I'm trying to say, fourth, third, and second is movies, tech, and games, right? That's kind of what we do. So people who are drinking gin are more likely to buy what we do. So what would you do with that? When would you run your advert differently? How would you change your app? And what would you do late at night when you knew there was a gin drinker? How would you find out there were a gin drinker? There's a lot of data you got in that. And there's other things. If you are sleepy, you are more likely to buy different things in supermarkets because your brain wants to stimulate itself. If you're totally on it, you buy the same stuff, or you always sell. Counterintuitive, but that's how it works. So how would you use that? Really interesting. This is actually inferring where bodies are using Wi-Fi interference. So there's no cameras are involved in this, but there's a video behind this one if you go and look for it. But basically, just using Wi-Fi signals, and it's detecting where the Wi-Fi signal is coming back. It's using a bit of sort of machine learning or deep neural networks in this. And it's just basically saying when they interfere with each other, we can sort of infer when something moves, we can see the difference in the Wi-Fi coming back to the receiver. And therefore, we can then plot that as a human being, as a whatever, whether it's a dog or it's a human. So on the positive side, you can go, well, this can now detect humans and postures quite accurately without using incriminating cameras and personal identifiable data. Likewise, you might say, well, this is now tracking people when they can't even see cameras, there's no warning. So depending on where you want to go with it. But if you are an elderly person in a home and your Wi-Fi can tell when you've fallen over, which already exists, by the way, then this is a really interesting development. Post-quantum algorithms, so quantum computing, I'm not going to go into that, but basically quantum computing is going to do a step change and currently is step changing the processing power we've got. The algorithms we've got today won't stand up for that. You can brute force those relatively easily. However, the National Institute of Standards and Technology in America have done a 6-year sort of invited study where they've now published actually 7 algorithms that they're now happy with that are now quantum proof. So you need to be on that one. If you've got any data, your bank accounts are not safe as soon as quantum computers start nibbling at the algorithm. So just be aware of that. And then this is looking at video of, so this is not using LiDAR scanners, this is just 2D video of a tennis player. What you can then do is you can learn the tennis player, but it learns the style of the tennis player. So basically, if you've got 2 tennis players, it can predict where the ball is probably going to go next. When a ball comes to them, it predicts what they might do. So imagine that if you can project forwards, you can go, every time you can stop a live game and go, what do we think is going to happen next? based on the mapping we're doing, they're probably going to hit over here. So that's really interesting. But likewise, you can then do future games that never happened or previous games that never happened. McEnroe versus, I don't know, whoever, a tennis player. That sort of thing you can do. If you work in broadcast, this is invaluable. We're already working with Comcast, and this is currently being used to put live overlays on, I think it's baseball. So what is the percentage of this being a home run or whatever it is, or what is the up and down? If this goes this way, what's the next play going to be? So that's super interesting. I like that. Hardware is hard, but that's why we do it. You must know about Boston Dynamics, what I sort of, always like jokingly say the killer robot dogs. But actually, we have a partnership in the Universal Studios part of us. And we're using these as, for visitor attractions and things like that. Obviously, we're working on how they can be safe, and we're not deploying them yet by any stretch. But it's something we're looking at. Like, you always look at this sort of thing and go, how can I use that? But realistically, you only really need humanoid robots for weird stuff like this. Most of the time, you don't need a humanoid robot. But, they can now jump up stuff, they can throw bags at you, and they can knock boxes off scaffolding. Awesome. But if you've seen other videos with guns and whatnot, it gets a little bit unsettling. But and they also can walk up metal structures as well with magnets on their feet. So I don't want to give you nightmares, but that's really interesting. Flipper Zero. If you've not got a Flipper Zero, I do have one. Had one for a while. 160 quid for a Flipper Zero. And they're like a little hacking device. They're not particularly good when they come out of the box, but with a few little tweaks and a few bit of learnings, you can get some really interesting stuff out of this thing. If I was being mischievous in America, I can get through every traffic light on a green, for instance. Let's just say I was in a hotel in Portugal a couple of weeks ago, and maybe I can get the lock on the door to give up its key that I can then unlock the door with without having a key. That was kind of interesting, Crypto One vulnerability. So, and they hadn't locked in. I went to reception and went, do you realize you're offer? They went, sorry, what? Anyway, but it's really interesting. It's now becoming fun. And therefore, as a technology company, we need to be aware that people are now attacking us because it's fun. Like, it'd be amazing to shut that screen down. You go, yeah, no, so halfway through a broadcast. So this is what hardware is to the motor industry. This is paint. But this is actually e-ink, so it's the same as what you used to get in your Kindle. But it does 32 colors. Why would you want to do this? Well, you might want to go, well, when I park it outside my house, I want it to be blue because it matches the wall. Likewise, if you're a getaway driver, you might want to change the color. But maybe you're on a motorway and the car behind you is too close, your car goes red. Until they back off, it goes amber and green. So there's really interesting sort of techniques you can use. But likewise, you can park it in a parking lot and it starts showing adverts and you get 20 quid by the time you come back because 300 people have seen it because you've seen them on the camera doing it. So quite interesting. And the very fabric of what a computer is also changing as well. So these organic experiments or these organic computers. So this is using 80,000, I know it says 18 in there, but it's 80,000 mouse brain cells. Now, those are born from stem cells, so we didn't use 80,000 mice to get their brains. So they're cultured brain cells. And basically what it does is it learns like a neural network, which is what a brain is, to do the computations, and they're repeatable. If you then injure it, or if you then segment it somehow, it learns another route. So it's self-preparing organic computers. I think quite interesting. And just how much of a nerd am I? The NFC standard is getting an update in 5 years' time. Yay. So the NFC standard, it's your card, it's your Oyster card or whatever it is, can currently do 5 millimeters and 1 watt of power. So the base transfers 1 watt of power. It can activate the little chip and talk, and that's pretty much it. It's going to 3 centimeters and 3 watts of power. That doesn't sound a lot, but you can now have devices on your bench that can now be powered with 3 watts of power 3 centimeters away. All sorts of things are now interesting because you can now do sort of things that can detect sort of environmental changes, those sort of things, rather than having to have it like literally slapped on it. So that's quite interesting. Energy is a thing. EU battery laws got, I think, consolidated this week, but this has been going on for a while. Anything sold in the EU has to have a battery that I think they've put here, traceable, recyclable, and replaceable. Phones, they might make an exception for, but they basically anything with a battery needs to now not go into landfill. Really quite interesting. And what we've seen is the carbon footprint of things like blockchains really come under the spotlight, but AI is now coming under that spotlight as well. So you've got everything from sort of carbon emissions like in-state, like literally the computers and stuff that get used for the computation. And over on the other side, you've got the actual impacts on society that might also have an impact. So maybe we're going on more holidays because we've got more spare time. Well, that's an impact of AI allowing us to do that. So everything has to be calculated in that. Ethereum, I haven't really talked about blockchain that much or Web3, but without going too difficult into it, if you look at Bitcoin, it's always like it's using the energy products of Belgium to grind through Bitcoins every year. So basically that's using proof of work. So if you want something to be basically authenticated on the blockchain, you need to send it out to a load of people doing like grindy work, big algorithms that need video cards to chew through it. And it's actually pretty much the same as gold mining in its energy consumption to do Bitcoin mining. If you do proof of stake, which is what Ethereum has changed to, which is what a lot of the NFTs use, most of them do, basically use proof of stake. So proof of stake is, yeah, I can do that. And they go, well, what's to stop you doing a dodgy transaction? You go, well, I'll stake some of my cryptocurrency. And if I do a dodgy transaction, you take my stake away from me. And like, therefore, I'm not going to do it, right? Because I'll just be losing money. And there's enough of us to make it me the outlier if I do try and do that. So proof of stake just uses one or 20 people or whatever it is to do the transaction rather than farming out to people grinding through things. And you can see the you know, what is this, 131 terawatt hours down to 0.0026. So therefore it's 99.84% more energy efficient to do it that way. So that's starting to happen on the blockchain as well, which is awesome. This was in California where they were having issues with their power supply. And they went, look, oh, right, we're going to have another blackout things. And when we have blackouts, hospitals start to suffer and that sort of thing. Transport starts to suffer. Sent out a text to everybody. And we've had, this is what we had basically a test for during the summer. We all got a text message wherever we were. This is the sort of thing they're going to be doing. It's like, can everybody stop using power right now? And they went, yes, okay, because if we don't do it, we're going to have a blackout. And they went, okay, cool. So they got 1.2 gigawatts less power consumption within 5 minutes. No blackouts happened. Everybody was cool. So it's kind of interesting. Like, point about this one is critical infrastructure needs to be protected. But also, if you're in an industry where you can try and lobby to become critical infrastructure, then that's quite interesting as well. So it becomes a legal thing, which is where we're going on to next. So this is sort of vaguely legal, but there's a lot of government and business restrictions coming on. So if you're allowed to use ChatGPT willy-nilly in your company right now, then you might be seeing that turned down right now, because some of the apparently about 5% of people have put something that is proprietary or sensitive into ChatGPT. ChatGPT, the public version, goes straight to OpenAI. It's readable by them for training and whatever it is. But if there's anything private in there, you've just shared it with another company. Bill C-18 in Canada is Google and Meta now need to pay for news. So they're going, well, we're going to remove news in Canada, and they go, well, go on then. And so we'll see how that happens. Meta have properly got hauled over the coals in Europe because they've been basically saying, as soon as you say yes by using this website, I allow all this stuff to go on. They go, no, it needs to be specific. It needs to be GDPR. And also you've got things like public services. This is Madison Square Gardens, who they had some lawyers that they had some dealings with, and their facial recognition in their Madison Square Gardens concert hall picked up the lawyers, and then the heavies, the security, threw them out. And then you've got other artists on the other side of it who said, we will not actually perform in anywhere that has any facial recognition. So we're starting to see kind of how's that going to be put through the laws. Google, for instance, is starting to generate results that are incorrect because of AI. So this one here, Johannes Vermeer, this is the girl with the pearl earring. That's not it. That's it. This has been generated by AI, yet that somehow has become the top result and appears in there. So like probably the robots.txt is how can you stop things being trawled by AIs that don't need to be or shouldn't be. This is probably going to lead to what's called model collapse. If this is the first time you've heard this phrase, it's quite a useful phrase. It's like an exhaust gas. If you feed the exhaust gas back into the entrance, well, eventually the engine's going to stop. So it's, it's garbage in, garbage out, used to be the phrase. So this is kind of what happens. If you start having AIs trained on public stuff that humans have created, and the humans are now starting to create AI stuff, and they put that back where the humans used to see the human stuff, the AI models start ingesting human stuff and AI stuff, and eventually it starts to become almost useless. People are sort of going, oh, well, some of the generative AI stuff at the moment is already suffering from this. However, there's no way of telling piece of data has been generated by AI, so there's no way of sort of not ingesting it at the moment. There's no metadata or anything like that. But artists are already on the case. So this is Glaze. You put some adversarial pixels in your art. So you upload your art, it puts some adversarial pixels. And those adversarial pixels trip up the algorithms. When it sees them, it goes, oh, this is a Rembrandt. So therefore, if you upload sort of 7 pieces of your art, it goes, well, there's a Rembrandt, there's a Degas, and it can't get your style because it's already been tripped up at every single point. So that's kind of interesting. Doing the right thing, we're nearly there. Am I nearly there? Yeah, nearly there. Doing the right thing is really important. I'm sorry for anybody from TSB, but this was last year. It's a really good example. It's been fixed now. It's all good. So please don't annoy TSB about this. But 2 things going wrong here. One is you should never expose a public error like that to the, it's like, even if it is, you should go, oops, something went wrong. Sorry about that. Here's an error code. Please call somebody or whatever, but don't put the error code in there. The second thing you should not do, or arguably the first, is not enough good slaves to write. Okay, now, if you're being a bit sort of techie, obviously you have a master process, which then generates slave processes, which you then put some processing to, and they report back up. But if there's not enough of those, something's gone on, you probably don't have enough of those slave processes to write the data to report back up to the master. You certainly don't use those words anymore, because there is a far more inclusive version of that here. So master slave, nothing wrong with leader follower, primary replica, primary and standby. It would have been completely different if you say not enough standby processes to write. Wouldn't have been an issue. So, just bear that in mind. But likewise, your gender drop down. If this is the first time somebody comes to your site, they want to sign up and they go, Mr. or male or female, they go, this is not the right site for me because I don't identify as those anyway. So just even something like that, you might be sending the wrong message just through the drop down that you put on your, or even the database system that actually needs to capture it in the back end as well. This is VW, obviously Dieselgate, they got all caught up with that, and then pretty quickly they went, right, we're going to do supply chain analysis all the way through. So they hired another company to do blockchain supply chain analysis. I'd argue you don't need a blockchain for this, you just need a really good database with security on it. However, if you're an end consumer, you want to know where the oil came from in your brand new car, where did the tires come from, and by the way, where did the battery get sourced from, and was it legit? Then that's what we started to see. So these supply chains that are now public, when you get your car, it then says, scan this QR code, we'll show you the lineage. It's been around for a while, the concept of it. Where did you get your coffee from? Did they actually get the fair trade for the fair trade coffee that you've actually just bought? And Dove, who are notorious for doing a brilliant advertising and very inclusive advertising, they said, look, there's no excuse you shouldn't be doing that as well. If the excuse is we couldn't get the models, we don't know where they are, we haven't got the price again, doesn't matter, get in touch, we'll pay for them. Have a look at all of our models, they've got numbers next to them, just tell us which one you want, we'll pay for it. We'll make sure that your adverts are diverse and inclusive as well. So flipping love that, that's great. Shopify, this was this week. They've had this running for a year. It's called Operation Chaos Monkey, which I just love. So Operation Chaos Monkey is how do we get rid of meetings? How do we make it a more productive place to be? And they've just launched this thing, which is estimated meeting costs. So to do that, that actually implies that everybody's costs are public as well, because I don't know about you, but the first thing I do is like, I'm just going to set up a load of fake meetings with individuals and just deduct my salary and I'll know exactly what they're earning as well. However, let's just say you work in a culture where that's okay. That's a really interesting thing to do. Like, is it really worth having that thing? Is it really worth having all of those Slack channels? I just love that as a sort of, it's the right thing to do. And finally, so this is the biggest trend. So this is only one slide. And if you take one thing away from today, it is this. Now, if, for instance, this will probably take you through for the next 20 years. There's this one trend, and it is 3D printed cake, right? 3D printed cake, not only 3D printed cake with different layers of cake, but with a laser that can cook the cake in different layers as well. Now, I don't know about you, but where I see this going is if you said, right, you need to go on a mission to Mars, and you go, that's going to be 6 years or something like in an Elon Musk capsule, this is going to be the activator. They go, as soon as I get a look, there's a cake machine, I'm there. So basically, 3D printed cake, this has been coming for a long time, but now the laser to cook it has really sort of accelerated. Look at that, amazing, great. Obviously, I was joking, but which trends are Sky most likely to investigate? Which are we most interested in? Of course, I'm going to say literally all of that. The reason it's in here is because I've gone through like 7 every week for probably I've gone back about 2 years going, yeah, we're doing that, we're doing that, we're doing that, we're interested in that, we're looking at that, we've been inspired by that. So every one of those slides is because we're doing something about it. So it's an interesting place to work, shall I say. Every door you open, every rock you unturn, you will find something like this going on, or somebody going, that's interesting, have you got any more like that? So there you go. Hopefully that was useful. 3 minutes to go. Now, I'm not a massive expert on any of this, but I do have an opinion on all of it. So I don't know whether any questions I can answer, but I'll have a go at them.
Let me just pick my jaw off the floor. Wow, that was a lot and very fast and very exciting. We really don't have a lot of time. So any questions in the room? Who's going to be brave? Yes, down here.
My name's Dino. Yeah, you just pulled out the issue with it, right? My name's Dino. It's what Dino saw. but yeah, that's the problem, right? It's just not quite right. So I need to work on it. But it's what Dino saw. It's the Dino saw.
I like it.
Yeah.
It's cool. It's good.
But thank you for that.
Little plug as well.
Yes. Yeah.
and over here.
Hi. So my question isn't like that, unfortunately. I was very interested in this line about the red thread and the kind of why we're in technology to do stuff. And for me, it's about combating disinformation. So what is your opinion on the thing that I'm most concerned about, really, which is deep faking, and this kind of race between the technology to produce ever more sophisticated deep fakes and the technology to detect it and to stop it from being used for politically nefarious ends? What's your broad view on that currently? Where's it going? Should we be worried, or is there a reason to hope?
I should preface it. This is my opinion,
Cool,
right?
yeah.
There's no Sky opinion on this, by the way. Well, there might be, but I just don't know it. I think we're in a really tricky place right now. Humans have not evolved to have any defense against misinformation. Like we are programmed to trust people in authority, for instance. It's just what we do. That said, I can see a point quite soon. Legislation is starting to creep up on us. You know, I've been off Facebook for years. You know, and I can see, and I just knew it was going to end up in a Facebook shape. But I think what we're seeing is legislation is starting to notice it. Countries are having views on what generative AI should be used, and states in America are as well, plus companies. So we're starting to see people have an opinion on it, where the last probably 8-9 years they haven't had an opinion on it at all. And I think also I can absolutely see where somebody like Apple, who are the leaders in trying to be private and all that sort of stuff, but sell your data as well. I can absolutely see them having a little red dot on it, because there are some great examples of where you can detect affected pixels. If there's any sort of duplicated pixels, you can see those. If there's anything, and then the race is on to try and hide those. And if you know what they're doing, you can then But at some point, that algorithm needs to be updated, a bit like an antivirus, profile. Every week, we've spotted them. Even if you just go, I've seen an image, and you go, yes, but this image has been checked, and there's another 20 million of them been produced in the last 15 minutes that other people are looking at. You go, there's something about this. This is not as original as I thought it was. Google have already started doing it about this image, so they've got some metadata in there. But I think I can actually see any piece of hardware having almost like a hardware wallet type of a thing, where it puts a little red, amber, green, and then you can sort of just swipe over it and it'll go like, well, this is why it's been flagged. So I can see legislation catching up with it, but I can also see some hardware people, even monitors, even TVs, is like built into the hardware. You can't see a thing in an electronic thing unless it's been through the hardware level. So I don't know. That's kind of where I've seen all that. I can see a dot happening somewhere. Not the best answer, but see where it's going.
Exciting and terrifying at the same time, almost.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. Right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. That was incredible.
Pleasure.
Massive round of applause, please, everybody.